Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him. And then a leper approached, did him homage, and said, "Lord, if you wish, you can make me clean." He stretched out his hand, touched him, and said, "I will do it. Be made clean." His leprosy was cleansed immediately. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you tell no one, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ. Today in Genesis 17, we hear about God's covenant with Abraham. One aspect of it is that he and his descendants after him would have to be circumcised. And oftentimes when people read this passage, they wonder, why circumcision? Right? Why was that the deal? The deal is because this is Genesis 17, which takes place right after Genesis 16. Right? And in Genesis 16, that was where Abram famously took the maidservant Hagar, right, and had relations with her to have Ishmael. Right? He did not trust in God's promise. And so circumcision was a reminder, right, about that mistake and to trust in God's promises. Now, something else I think about this passage that is very significant, right, and relevant to each of us is that many of us, right, all of us in some ways, we are like Abram and Sarah. Right? Abram left his home country, right, when he was 75 years old. He left his family and he left his country and he followed God's command. And he went where God was leading him and he trusted him. And then 24 years passed and God still had not given him his son, even though he was faithful. And so first he brought his nephew Lot, just in case God did not give him a son, right? Lot could be his heir as his nephew. And then when they separated from each other, then Abram suggested to God that maybe one of his servants could be his heir. And God said no. Then Abram took his maidservant Hagar and had a son with her, and his name was Ishmael. And when God promised to Abram, again here in Genesis 17, that he would give him a son, Abram said, "Don't worry about it, God. Why don't you just let Ishmael be the one to be blessed? I've waited long enough." And God insisted on Isaac. What this reveals to us is that God does indeed have a plan for us. And he does indeed have gifts to give to us. He is the giver of the greatest gifts. And oftentimes, because he is the giver of the greatest gifts, sometimes we don't even realize the gift that we really long for. And we go about our lives and we ask God for specific things, or we try to do certain things, and we want God to bless those things. But oftentimes, God has something to give us that we don't even realize. I remember when I was in, one of the years I was in seminary, some of you know that part of my seminary career was not exactly enjoyable. I didn't get along very well with some of the formators at one of the seminaries I was at, and I got very frustrated. Oftentimes when I was at that seminary, I got frustrated because of all the things that I wanted to see happen in the seminary. All the things that I wanted to be a part of with my fellow seminarians. And over the course of my time there, I was very humbled, and I realized that I needed to be more trustful and patient. And instead of me trying to figure out what God was trying to put in my path, I had to wait. I had to wait on God to reveal those things to me. And there were some very beautiful gifts that God had to give me. first I had to wait. I had to let God lead. And many Christians, many of us, we struggle to trust God because we feel like He isn't answering our prayers, or He isn't blessing the things we want Him to bless. But the problem is He does have gifts to give us. But we aren't patient. We aren't watching. We aren't waiting on Him to show us the signs, show us the path. And because of them, we don't ever actually receive those gifts. God does indeed have an Isaac that He wants to give to us. But we have to wait. Wait for His lead.